We've had Paul Seegert on many, many times because he knows of what he speaks. He is the managing partner at PCS Advisors, a benefits consulting firm with 35 offices across the nation. And he joins us now again here on 700 WLW. Paul, how are you on this glorious Saturday?
I'm great, Ken. How are you?
I'm fine, yeah. I was just kind of amazed at some of the inaccuracies and some of the verbiage that was flying around the Supreme Court of the United States yesterday. Were you?
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the most shocking that you mentioned when we have a Supreme Court justice saying that there's 100,000 kids in the hospital, many of them on ventilators, when there's 3,348, I think was the number when she made that statement. And most of those are incidental, meaning they were hospitalized for, or at least a good portion of them are, where they're hospitalized for something else entirely and then also happen to test positive for COVID.
Yeah,
we're seeing some of this come out now more and more.
I mean, if you go back to August of 2020 through last Wednesday, this past Wednesday, the number of kids hospitalized in that 15, 16 months span was 81,000. 81,000. And now she's got over 100,000 kids on ventilators. I mean,
and it's also 81,000, many of which were not hospitalized, according to Dr. Fauci in the last week and a half on news shows around the country. He's now kind of admitting something that those of us tracking the data have known for a long time. Many of those 81,000 were not hospitalized because of COVID. They were hospitalized with COVID.
Right.
And so the numbers through this whole experience, as we've talked about before, are not, they're just not that accurate if you're wanting to know what the real pandemic is, what the real crisis is, right, when we're including in the hospital. In fact, New York State, just I think yesterday or the day before, published information that revealed half of their numbers that they're claiming as COVID hospitalizations are incidental. Yeah. People that are in for some other reason and have COVID as well.
Yeah. Well, as to the business at hand in front of the Supreme Court, the feeling I got after watching it was that the majority, which is conservative, makes it's 5-3, and you never know what Roberts is going to do. It depends on where he was the night before, but it seems to me that the mandate for private employers is not going to make any kind of headway in front of the Supreme Court. I think that'll get shot down. But the healthcare workers and that separate suit that's in front of the Supreme Court, I think that may have legs. What do you think?
I do too. I agree with your analysis. I think the administration knew that the OSHA route was not likely to succeed or would face real serious challenge, and so they were out in front of it, encouraging employers to implement it before it was even interpreted into a rule by OSHA, which is its own interesting conversation because 85% of employers were planning to have some sort of a policy in place, and they all put the brakes on it while they waited. Right. So now we only have 18 that do. But I agree that one is not likely to hold. OSHA doesn't have a good track record of using this emergency temporary standard authority, and this is the biggest reach that they've made with that statute. And 6 out of the 9 last times they've done it, it hasn't stood up to legal scrutiny. But I agree, the healthcare worker, there's more precedent there. Healthcare workers have been required to take many other vaccines to work in many states. So that one has a lot more likelihood of surviving, I think. I
forgot where I saw this yesterday. It was, you see things on Twitter and you look at them and you laugh and you forget what the genesis was. It wasn't anything factual. It was just anecdotal and kind of comedic. And somebody said that this whole thing that the administration tried to do with private employers, where they basically are working an OSHA law that really isn't applicable, and then have the chief of staff, Ron McClain, say, we know it's a workaround, but we're that's the way it goes, ha, 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 ha. They equated that to a Perry Mason moment where somebody jumps up in the middle of a trial and screams, I'm guilty, I'm guilty, take me away. I think, again, if you look at Sotomayor, who seemed really oblivious to facts regarding this case. I mean, things you can even get from watching television, listening to a show like this, or reading anything online of any substance. I would have to think that if Ron McClain is admitting that this was basically an OSHA scheme, you would think maybe that the people that are hearing this case, unless they're blindly political, would have to know it's an OSHA scheme as well, right?
I think so. And in the last couple of days, I opened 2 pages of my notebook, and I just started to write down all the things that we've been told that then took a 180 or changed drastically. All the things that Dr. Fauci is, by his own description, called noble lying, which may be what she was engaged in yesterday. And it's 2 pages long of things. It's incredible how this thing has evolved. The fact that we still ignore natural immunity with 90 studies now that confirm it's real, and still tell the only solution we seem to promote is everybody has to get vaccinated. We're so off track in regard to the healthcare worker mandate. We have health systems that will allow a nurse who's vaccinated but COVID positive at that moment to work and treat patients. But if you're not vaccinated, you're fired.
Yeah.
And you could have an unvaccinated COVID negative nurse handling that same role, but because they're not vaccinated, they get fired, like at the Mayo Clinic when they just fired 700 people. Yeah. And yet you'll let a COVID positive person do the job so long as they wear a mask. That really, you don't have to be a scientist to really scratch your head and say, how foolish have we become?
Yeah. And am I not right that there is a distinct difference between vaccinated and immunized? I'm sorry, yeah. Immunized.
That's on my list of noble lying. When they, everybody was told if you get this thing, COVID stops with you, and now of course we know that that's not the case.
No.
And it's not like these folks aren't scientists and experts. I mean, come on. Back to our list of noble lies.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, the problem is the far left, which is is in charge of our government right now, pending further elections. The far left and their sycophants in the media, they've latched on to Fauci. Fauci's their god, and they're not going to let Fauci go, regardless of A, whether Fauci is telling the truth, or B, confused, or C, his message has just run hollow with the majority of Americans. And they're clinging to this guy, and they're clinging to everything that he says. And as we said, half of the things he says, he doesn't say the same thing the next day. It's baffling. Really, this love affair with this guy, and why they can't find somebody else that can connect with the majority of Americans that are out here that just want straight answers. And maybe if they got that, we wouldn't be in the Supreme Court at this point.
Well, we've lost so much confidence on the part of the American population. You can't engage in all this noble lying and maintain confidence. We were no on masks, yes on masks. Now they're back out on mainstream media outlets saying the masks were never effective. Fauci himself is now starting to go on the news and differentiate between people hospitalized with COVID versus because of COVID.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a trend now because I think they realize that they've about worn the population out and lost so much trust, and it's such a political liability that and the mission's accomplished, frankly, from a business perspective. The vaccines have been sold. Mm-hmm. So that means I think we're going to see this thing begin to wind down. We're going to start talking about things that were taboo not too long ago that we've talked about before, like we're not all at the same risk profile.
Yeah.
There are comorbidities, obesity being the biggest. Mm-hmm. We're going to start talking about some of that stuff, and they're going to use it act as though these are new discoveries. And good news, and we're going to wind this thing down. That's my prediction over the next few months.
We'll all forget about it. It'll be out of the conscience of the American public and the people that are on the nightly newscasts and cable TV channels. They'll just move on to the next crises because the only thing they care about is eyeballs to sets and things that they can turn and flip into money. Meanwhile, we've all been played in a sense. Nobody is down. You and I have come down this road a long time. Nobody is downplaying the seriousness of COVID, Delta, even Omicron, which looks like it's if you're vaccinated, a glorified head cold. Nobody's downplaying that. It's just along the way, the absurdities along the way. And, what's next? That's the thing I worry about.
Well, it has to be okay to question this. question things. That's science. That's normal debate.
Oh, no, you're not allowed to question science.
We haven't been able to.
No, don't question science. Whatever you do is don't question science. So when would you expect the Supreme Court to hand down this ruling? I know you're not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. We don't know how these things work, but we do have that date that Biden has set for this coming week. Do you think this will be short order? Do you think it will be sometime?
I think it will. I'm expecting it will be soon, maybe in this coming week. They're kind of, I think, trying to buy a little time to avoid a stay or a halt, whatever you want to call it, by saying we're only going to do the masking for January. The other stuff doesn't kick in until February. No. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if we have news in the next few days.
Yeah. And I think
it'll be good news for the business community.
For private business, because there was even I thought a hint yesterday when I was watching where the court was asking, can we have more time? I mean, do we really have to rush this thing through? Can we have time to study it? And of course, those that were arguing in favor of the vaccine mandate, the Solicitor General for the United States, she was saying, you can have some time. So they may punt this for a couple of days and get a stay on that date. So they don't necessarily have to rule immediately. They could get a stay on the date, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think probably the most likely outcome in the short term.
Yeah. Paul Seegert, always great having you on. I appreciate it. You get it. You should be the spokesman for the United States. I may push for that when it's all said and done to see if I can't get you to Washington, D.C. You would absolutely love that, right? I guess
I think you have to be crazy to do that job. Or anything close.
You take care. Stay well. We need to hear your voice, okay?
You too. Thanks for having me.
There he is, Paul Seegert, PCS Advisors. Nearly 2